I'm Dr. Frank Granito, Chief Scientist with the Institute for Digital Transformation. I want to welcome you to Digital Dialogue, where different industry experts discuss digital transformation topics and issues that are of concern to all businesses. Whether you are already a digital enterprise, or on your journey, or still trying to figure out what that all means, we know you'll find something here for you. Remember, as a LinkedIn Live session, this is your opportunity to interact with these experts. Post your comments and questions in chat for a full interactive experience. Welcome to Digital Dialogue.
Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be talking about the role of service management in digital transformation. Digital transformation consists of true organizational change and business that's enabled by digital tools. Service management can guide and accelerate digital transformation with practices and governance that are independent of specific vendors and tools. In this digital dialogue, we'll discuss the current role and future advantages of good service management and the organization's roadmap for digital transformation success. And with me today are several colleagues who I've enjoyed working with for a good long time. First, I'd like to welcome 𝗵𝗲𝗆 Blackstaff, who is a consultant, trainer, advisor, and coach in digital transformation, leadership, and governance, and the CEO of 𝗗𝗶𝗴𝗵𝘁𝘀𝗶. She's led transformation efforts for enterprise technologies such as ServiceNow, Microsoft 365, Dynamics, Azure, and other ERP and ITSM systems. Her company's training and coaching programs support digital leaders at all levels. Patty's an industry advisor for the 𝗗𝗶𝗶𝗵𝘁𝘀 School of Business, a fellow at the Institute for Digital Transformation. Thank you, Patty, for being a colleague, and a coalition member for the Workplace Stop. Writer, artist, and recovering corporate director. Patty lives in Calgary, Alberta, with her husband and co-founder, Walt. Greg Sanker is a former CIO, an author, a speaker, and a practitioner, helping organizations and people achieve excellence. He's known for practical, been there, done that advice, and is again an HDI Top 25 thought leader in technical support and service management for 2022. He's the author of IT Change Management, a Practitioner's Guide, and the ITIL 4 Change Enablement Guide. He blogs about excellence in IT service management at itsmtransition.com and leadership and transformation at irreverentfuturist.com. Ken Gonzalez, known by his nickname KenGon, is a seasoned business and technology professional with over 35 years of experience. In addition, he's internationally recognized as an expert in service management. Until September 2022, Ken spent 6 years at Gartner as an analyst and advisor, helping business executives, technology leaders, and their direct reports develop innovative resolutions to their most pressing issues and concerns. He brings a wide range of interests and life experiences to his work, taking a multidisciplinary, people-centric, value-based, focused results approach. So now that we're all here, let's move on to the discussion. I'm going to start by asking a question of Greg. In addition to writing books and creating training on service management, you spent many hours in organizations working to get services right, choosing improvements to be made, and helping IT professionals understand the importance of what they do. From your perspective, what does service management, and we're not talking just about IT service management here, what does service management contribute to the organization that can be valuable in transformation efforts?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on the show. Secondly, yeah, I used to describe myself as somebody that does this for a living. In other words, I make mistakes all day and then I write about it and talk about it, after hours at conferences and whatnot. So there's probably not a mistake that can be done in service management that I haven't explored. All right. So when we talk about digital transformation, that's taking us on this journey to some place that we haven't been before. I mean, it really is truly different. And there's been a lot of doors opened by technology and by transforming how organizations interact the very nature and makeup of organizations. But what hasn't changed is that the fundamentals, the nuts and bolts of managing the infrastructure, the technology, or the components of delivering within an organization remain fairly static. Let's put it this way. So let's say I'm going to go on this journey to an unknown place, and I need transportation to get there. Just because I'm going to a place that I don't know, I don't say, well, the car is old school, the suitcase is old school, my telephone and my flashlight and my pickaxe are all old school. I need to get rid of those and reinvent them. No, I take those things along with me and I use them in perhaps new and different ways than we have before. But those are the nuts and bolts. And within organizations, we have to tie those fundamental capabilities to our organizational governance, which is where we're driving the transformation out of, right? So it's the connection between the vision and the strategy and the ground level. Let's get some stuff done here.
When you say that, Greg, what I think of is the ITIL guiding principle: start where you are.
Absolutely.
Don't discard everything. Start where you are, which is a great principle. Patty and Greg, Ken and Patty, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Greg, governance is one of my hot topics, right? When you talk about governance, you're talking about lining up the policies and the procedures, but the knowledge base, all of those pieces have to be lined up with what the transformation is doing. And unless you're doing that on a higher level where you ensure that it lines up with the business outcomes and your governance then is set to realign, then that makes a huge difference for being able to make that digital transformation successful. And service management, every single time an icon changes, somebody makes a call. It's digital, but there's this whole human piece to it.
I thought every time an icon changed, an angel got its wings, but that's a different movie.
Right?
Anything to add to that, Ken?
Well, I'll start off with, Greg, I'm really curious, what's the pickaxe for? I've got nothing.
It's a tool that you might use in certain circumstances, and it's probably emblematic of something that's obsolete, right? It's like, but when you need a pickaxe, you need a pickaxe.
Yeah.
It's for those days when that computer is just not cooperating.
Right tool for the job.
Yeah. And I like the thing that Patty said, because I think that especially as we use the term digital transformation, the thing we want to start to get real clear about are the outcomes and how individual contributors, how managers that are in the IT organization, how they're approaching what they're doing, why they're doing it, and because get right down to it, IT exists to serve whoever the internal customer or external customer is that's going to take advantage of whatever the capabilities are that the mission of the organization is about. So if we can't set ourselves up to be able to help people fulfill their mission essential task, IT is not getting the job done. We're not doing what's needed in order to be able to really justify ourselves and all of the things that we do.
I agree with that.
Thank you.
When we say outcomes, doesn't that confuse the situation a little bit because it sounds so vague? We've got digital, right? We've got artificial intelligence, our technologies, our platforms, the robotics. Then we've got human, empathy, values, judgment, experience, future visioning, all of those kinds of things. When we talk about outcomes, we're talking about where the transformation lives, and that's culture, organization, industry domains, business model, business process, and why, in fact, we need the transformation in the first place.
Let me give you another example.
Go ahead, Ken.
So you've got a business manager who is running a call center, and those operators are taking calls to service customers for whatever reason they've got. And I know that I've got 100 people and they need to be taking 12 calls per hour in order to be able to get the job done. And there's going to be a period of growth where we're going to be taking more people on. Well, the IT organization needs to think about this from an availability, capacity, and a performance management perspective about what it's going to take to properly support the business to get that job done. It's not, oh, we're going to go buy more infrastructure. It's no, we're actually going to figure out what we've got from a capacity perspective. And we're now going to organize ourselves so that we minimize friction and we maximize the ability for people to get their job done. And if all of a sudden that call handling system goes down, guess what? The customer's uber ticked off at us because we're getting in the way of producing the business outcome. And that's the thing. I think that if we start to really fine tune our listening and start engaging with business leaders about what are the outcomes that you need to produce so we can show that we really are getting the job done, or at least we're making the right attempts at change in order to be able to support that.
So can I just insert that the language that you and Patty are using, that is, for me, that's the language of governance. How does this organization ensure that we're achieving the strategic vision of the organization? How do we ensure that all of the resources are maximized on achieving those outcomes? But somehow the G word, governance, has taken on this horrible, terrible command control, bureaucratic. It's all about compliance. It's all about being rigid. And I understand that. But I think we need to free ourselves from that, because organizations that are high performance and moving at high velocity are organizations that are well governed from top to bottom.
Yeah, I think.
And I know excuse me, Patty, I know I've talked to Greg, and I've probably talked to Ken about this at some point too, which is we are recovering musicians, all of us. And one of the things that's important to think about when you think of music is that you're operating within very tight constraints. I mean, how many notes are there, folks? Without sharps or flats, there's 8 in an octave, and that's it. That's what you have to work with, and there's time signatures, and there's staff that you write your music on, all of those things, and it's how creative you can get within the constraints. A strong man operates within the constraints that he's given, as the saying goes, and so it's important to recognize that governance is not.
Just when he was making a good point.
Sorry, Roy, we can't hear you. Though, I'm going to jump on that, Roy. I hope it's okay if I jump in.
Go for it, Patty.
Talking. Okay, I'm going to jump on that. Sorry, Roy, we've lost your audio. But I think you have a really good point. We have to look at transformation in a different way, and a lot of it has to do with relationships. When you talk about service management, we're not talking about service management as an IT capability anymore. I mean, all of the tools are enterprise tools now, and they include way beyond what they originally started out as. We're talking about facilities and HR and a whole bunch of other pieces that belong to service management. And so governance, when you look at it, we have a traditional stance in most organizations of looking at governance in terms of fiduciary or compliance, instead of looking at governance as how do we shape the culture to get done what we need to get done. Right. And if you can look at governance beyond the fiduciary, beyond the regulatory or the compliance, and use it across your organization in a way that manages how service is provided in order to achieve the outcomes, then you're actually reinventing. So I would say a governance refresh for a lot of organizations is really required.
Right. You're just nodding. Okay. Nothing further to add. You're 100%, Patty. Spot on.
When Patty says it, that ends it. There we are. But I really think that when we fight the whole idea of governance, we're really missing the heart and soul of transformation. Like Patty said, that is how you transform your organization. You change the culture. You change our vision of who we are and how we work together. I like to say that you can't separate the technology from the people or the people from the technology. This becomes an there isn't an IT and a business. There's just us. And we're doing something that we probably haven't done before. And so it's all hands on deck of how do we achieve whatever it is that we're trying to achieve.
One of the things that Doug asked in the chat was how to start the business conversation regarding outcomes. And I think that probably the best piece of guidance that I could give is just start. It will probably be an uncomfortable conversation at first because, well, I don't know what to ask about. Or you start asking things and people are like, well, why are you asking me that? There's no substitute for actually getting going and actually learning as you go so that you can actually practice. And probably you've got stakeholders internally that are going to be willing to go on the journey with you and help you figure out. And as long as you're willing to take back what you hear, listen deeply, and then change your approach. Don't expect you're going to get it right the first time. As long as we're willing to continue engaging.
You know, when I was a CIO, I did pretty much exactly that. I just went out and talked to stakeholders, my peers, other people in the organization, and I heard some really amazing things. And about 3 months in, there was a conversation that changed my professional life forever. This person I was talking to said, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. It's great, which I've learned to say, okay, thank you, but what? And she kind of puts her head down and she said, you don't understand. Before you started leading this organization, the organization delighted in telling us no, sadistically, like we were the department of no. And I'm like, wow, it's amazing that that's been your experience because I'm here to serve this business and I mean it. And it was life-changing. A simple question. How can we help? What can we do better?
I think, too, a starting point for me always is having realistic conversations about effort. The vendor has this knowledge they're handing you, but you don't know what you don't know. Your teams don't know what they don't know. And I think a really deep conversation on effort involved is a really great place to start. Now, a question was asked about, how I'm going to read it. This also means that service management teams are not enabled to make the changes they need. Would you be correct to say that centralized governance needs to be loosened up and some aspects delegated downwards? Absolutely. Governance is not, in my mind, good governance is about governing the things that must be governed and creating a series of strong pieces of autonomy in the places where they are required. You've got to allow your customer service people and your support staff and those folks who are really serving the business to be able to make decisions that they know how to make because they're very intelligent, they're knowledge workers, they know their stuff. So governance isn't about holding the whole bag, it's about saying, what are the things we have to put in place to ensure we support their ability to have that autonomy?
And Frank commented at some point here that it's the agile concept of fail fast when we're talking about making mistakes and moving onward from that, and which is exactly what I was thinking when that point came up. And I think that we need to be able to do that. And actually, Patty and I have had conversations in the past about being able to budget for that failure. You've got to build that into your financial outlook as well, because let's face it, time is money, tools cost money. If you're going to experiment and allow for failures, you've got to build that into your budget as well. And so, Ken, as an analyst, you've had a bird's eye view of some of the struggles our organizations have had over the past few years. So from that point of view, what are some of the pitfalls for organizations to avoid as they work transformation through? Have you seen organizations that excel in service management do better when it comes to transformational change, and why or why not do you think that happens?
Right. I think that number one, there's a couple places where we kind of get tripped up. The first is in a really hyper focus on maturity, as if hey, if we just become more mature, we're going to do a better job in serving our customers. And the fact of the matter is that has not played out well. We've actually focused on being able to get people to raise their level of maturity. And the Gartner research that I was associated with shows that, we're in the low 2s consistently over the course of about 15 years. And with all of the focus and all of the attention, not really being able to make that move. That is just really, I think, criminal, and an indication that we should take a different tack to be able to work the issue. And the general piece of guidance that I would like to give everybody is a 3-stepper. So the first step is identify who your customers are. Who do you serve? If you can't answer that question, you're barking up the wrong tree. The second thing is, for any of the people that you serve, what do they count on you for? It could be an application, could be a service, it could be a product. Don't know, don't care, doesn't matter what you call it. And then the third question we want to ask is, how happy is your customer with the thing that you're providing them? And you can actually do that inventory fairly quickly, like in the course of one day, coming up with the list of things and doing the quick assessment. If you don't start from there, it's likely you're going to start trying to play around with technology or do something else that just isn't going to move the needle. But if I really want to change and impact the life of my customer, I'm going to start with the customer and then drive my change into the IT organization, so I know that the changes I do make are going to be timely and relevant for what they need.
And that parallels right along with what Steve Jobs said about, you don't start with the technology, you start with the customer and work back to the technology. And there's a great point from Randall. It's important to stress that people, processes, and technology are never mutually exclusive. We always talk about people, process, and technology, in this, especially in this industry, and they're not. They're all connected, right? It's the people connect things, and we tend to leave things out. If we leave the people out, we're disregarding the customers that Ken was just talking about. We're disregarding our colleagues. And it's really important to be inclusive of as much as possible. Never let those 3 things become dissociated from each other. Do you agree, or do you have additional thoughts on that, Patty? You're nodding and
nodding. Absolutely. When you're looking at service management, everything is connected, and that the interdependencies across the organization, the cross-functional functions, all of those pieces are really important. You need to focus on people, skills, functions, and value, right? So those are the 4 things I would say are really important to look at even before you start going. And we look at a 3-step, kind of a process. It's stabilize. First, let's look at what we're looking at before we move into transformation. What do we have to do to ensure we're doing that? And then how do we separate those decision-making rights from the original, operational rights, so that we can really truly go into the next stage, which we call sway, which is kind of an experimentation stage where you're learning about the people, the skills, the functions, and the value. And then we move into from that to what will it take to grow with this technology. And it's always never about the technology. The technology is there to prop up the functions and skills that we do to add value to the business outcome. And if we can continue to look at it that way and begin to invite the organization in, service management plays a huge role in that, because they are the connectors among those functions, right? It's not just an IT role. They need to have relationships with people that are within those other groups and the other departments. So I think that when we look at the lack of realization of effort before we even start, then we fail to ask this question: what is the heart of our service? How are we supporting these people within the organization so that this transformation actually allows us to transform?
To put the technology remark that you made into a military analogy that I know Ken will get. Technology is a force multiplier. It's a lever. It enables us to do things we would not otherwise be able to do. And if we think of it that way as we approach digital transformation, I think we get a long way down the road to overcoming the perception that digital transformation is only about technology, which is definitely, I think it's a deal breaker. If you start with that approach, you've got problems right off the bat. I would like to bring up a comment that Doug made, going back to what we were talking about when we brought up governance. Doug says centralized governance is typically not about governance, but is more about control. And I think we talked a little bit about that. While there's an element of control in governance, it's more about establishing trust, accountability, and enablement. Again, enabling people to get, it's another one of those levers that we can use to raise people up and have them accomplish things that they might not otherwise be able to accomplish. That's a key insight, and I think we need to get that across to people too. Governance is not all about control.
No, and I think if you look at governance a different way, if you say, listen, this is a great big sandbox that we're all playing in, and we just have to decide how we're going to play together in this sandbox, and these are the things that are going to happen if somebody throws sand, right? It's just an overarching agreement. It's almost like an organizational mental model as opposed to a team mental model, right? Where you're looking at the organization in terms of what are the things, the policies, the procedures, how are we going to manage our organization to get to that endpoint, our purpose, the things that we do, and how, what is the guidance we're going to give. If we feel our hands are tied, then the organizational governance is a power play, not the ability to be able to guide.
We have a comment here from LinkedIn user, so it's an unidentified person. I can't use their name, but thank you. This is all very deep for someone getting started with digital transformation. To understand the basics, please mention a free technologies that can be used for digital transformation road, please. I don't think I'm out of turn here by saying wrong way around. If you're starting with the technology, you're starting down the wrong fork in the road. If you want to use a simple free technology or almost free technology to start down the digital transformation road, I would suggest a tool that's very commonly used among software developers, and that would be Post-it notes, sticky notes, right? Start with the blank wall and use some sticky notes and start laying out the things that you need to do within your organization to change the way that you do business. Start thinking about those outcomes that we talked about. That's where you can start. Don't start with the technology. Figure out where you need to go. As I often put it, being a car guy, I don't walk out into the garage with a 9/16" ratchet and say, what am I going to fix today? Right. That doesn't make any sense to do that. Figure out what the job is that you need to do, then find the tools that are applicable to that job.
Yeah, and I love what Akshay says in the comments here. He's quoting Mark Smalley about, I believe, or no, yes, he is. Okay. Everything is actually a business model transformation or operating model transformation, but everything else is a technology refresh. So when we look at transformation, if we're focused on technology, we're talking about a transaction. We went to the store, we bought a chocolate bar, and now we're eating the chocolate bar, but nothing else changed in terms of who we are as a human being. So transformation really is about the organization transforming in order to change the business to make something happen, just like you said, Roy. And if the focus is technology, it's just a transaction.
So Patty, I used to talk about modernization is about catching up. We got behind, tech debt, we need new technology. But transformation is becoming an organization that doesn't get behind, that is adaptive, is agile, is responsive, is resilient. And it is exactly what Mark Smalley is quoted here as saying, and I've talked to Mark as well, is it's about the business It's not about the technology or the IT department or about any of the nuts and bolts. It's not about shipping and receiving and marketing. It's about who we are as an organization and how do we achieve those goals. And when IT starts thinking in those terms, starts thinking in terms of how do we fit into the broader context of what this organization is trying to achieve, starts first and foremost with, do I know what we're trying to achieve? And am I aligning my resources with that that goal and objective? Or am I doing, and I've got to throw this in, it's like process maturity is a great lark in my opinion. It's like, I used to do process maturity assessments, and we spent a great deal of time, and most people are somewhere between a 1 and a 2.5. And so naturally we need to be 3, 4, or 5, right? And so I actually challenged an organization. I said, you could have a level 5 process maturity, or a mature level process that is completely out of sync and serving no value within the context of the organization. So why would you measure that? You've got to measure what matters, which is something that I've been sharing for going on 10 years. Is like, what matters to the organization, and how do we know to what degree we're supporting that? Ken, you look like you wanted to say something there.
No, I was just actually making the face at you, because I mean, it's a very common thing to encounter. All too often, we lose the plot as soon as you start to try to measure the whole ability to, we become more mature. At number one, at what cost? And number two, at what benefit?
Right. I think one of the biggest bees in my bonnet is, to use a weird old lady expression, is when an organization says they're embarking on a digital transformation, and what it really is legacy replacement, because they're so far behind, they're forced to. That is not transformation. Transformation is strategic. It is about, where are we going to take this business?
So Matthew just dropped a, go ahead.
He dropped a big one
Yeah.
in the comments, and thanks, Matthew. Most don't recognize the difference between incremental improvement and transformation. They're very different and need different considerations, and I think that underlies a lot of the discussion that we've had. Thank you, Matthew. As we start to wrap up now, we're going to run out of time here pretty shortly. I would like to talk about this, and we've talked around it, but we haven't said it. And one of the things I think we need to say is that all of this involves the culture of the organization. When we talk about getting people to do things in new ways that they haven't done before, it's scary stuff, right? Yesterday I knew how to do my job. Today I don't, because we're doing things that very differently. So the culture of the organization has to be supportive. It has to allow for failure. It has to put people first and processes that assist them first. It has to let them use those levers. We talked about enablement and governance in a positive direction. That's all part of culture. If you define culture as, this is how we do things here, which is the biggest general umbrella term I can think of. So I think we've talked around it, but now let's get that said. And we really need to wrap up, but I would like to thank all of you for being here. Greg, Patty, and Ken, all the way from Barcelona. Thanks for chiming in here. And also for your sage remarks, all of you. We really appreciate it. And these are ongoing discussions, and we're going to see a little video right after this that tells you more about the digital dialogue from the Institute for Digital Transformation. Thank you again for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining our digital dialogue. Be sure to join our next digital dialogue on the first and third Tuesdays of every month.